Wow, this is sick.
80K announced.
I don't see how you bet the Raven.
Unbelievable pot brewing. Oh. He makes the call.
What the spade though? Oh my.
What? What?
Oh man.
This is sick for Humboldt Mike.
Hello and welcome to Poker Top 5 Hands, where we go around the internet and around the world to find the 5 most exciting poker hands played in the last month. We're aggregating streams like Hustler Casino Live, Triton Poker, Poker at the Lodge, and Bally's Live Poker, and drilling it down to the 5 most exciting and interesting hands recently played. Let's get started. Number 5 is a hand from the $25,000 buy-in event at Triton Monte Carlo. We have Chris Brewer, who won the 2023 $250,000 buy-in World Series of Poker event, versus Daniel Dvoras, who won a $250K Super High Roller. This hand begins with a different World Series of Poker champion, the 2019 main event winner, Hussein Hassan, raising from the cutoff with 6-4 suited. Chris Brewer makes a pretty standard 3-bet with ace-jack suited from the button. They're playing over 100 big blinds deep. The small blind gets out of the way, and then a very non-standard big blind, big 4-bet from Daniel Dvoras here with a pocket 8, playing very aggressively. The commentary suggested that maybe Brewer was targeting Hassan, and Dvoras picked up on that and targeted Brewer's weaker range. Either way, a very aggressive play between two great players, and we're going to have a very interesting pot after Hassan gets out of the way and Brewer calls. We go to a flop with King, Queen, 4, all spades. Neither player has a spade, but certainly that King-Queen could connect with their 4-bet strong ranges, with each player possibly having hands like Ace-King, Ace-Queen, King-Queen for top 2 pair. Dvoras decides to check it over to Brewer, and Brewer puts out a small feeler bet with his gut shot, his overcard, although he has to be concerned too that he has no spade. At this point in the hand, with 2 8s, no spade, 2 overcards, and a 4-bet pot, pretty reasonable spot for Dvoras to just give up, but he's not going to go down so easy. He looks at Brewer against this small flop bet, and we're going to go see a turn. The turn is the King of Diamonds, pairing the top card on the board, and Dvoras quickly checks with his underpair, and Brewer gives up on his bluff, or perhaps a slow-playing King's full, does think about it, and decides to check back as well. And we're going to go to a river. The river is about as much of a brick as it could possibly be with this 3 of hearts. Neither player has anything. Dvoras, of course, does have the better hand, but any king beats him, any queen beats him, any flush that might have gotten afraid of the full house beats him, any full house that perhaps slow played hoping someone would catch up to a worse flush beats him. So he can't be sure his hand is good, but he checks anyway. And now Brewer has a massive decision to make. His hand can almost certainly never be good. Even in the unlikely case Dvoras has something like ace-10 of clubs, Dvoras probably would have bluffed himself. So Brewer's ace-high is certainly not good here, but can he get a fold? Dvoras might have a hand like ace-queen that's checking with the intention of call, trying to get to showdown, and Brewer having checked back turn can't represent a lot. Perhaps a slow-played king's full, hoping a worse flush would catch up. But he goes for it anyway with a huge 50 big blind bet, putting in almost half a stack, putting Dvoras to the test, a disgusting spot with 2 8s after your opponent 3-bet, then called your cold 4-bet. I think most people are just giving up here, especially in Triton where there's VIPs, aka recreational businessmen, you could battle with instead of making this big hero call. But Dvoras is an experienced high-stakes pro. He doesn't want to give up if he thinks he could be good. He wants to think about it. He uses several time banks and then makes a massive call to win a huge pot early in this tournament. If you're going to cold 4-bet pocket 8s out of position against one of the best players in the world, you better be ready to play tough post-flop, and Dvoras proved in this hand he's capable of doing exactly that. At number 4, we're headed to Los Angeles, aka La La Land, for some La La Land poker at Hustler Casino Live. We have Ling Ling making a very reasonable open from the cutoff with ace-queen offsuit, and then Henry making a less reasonable 3-bet with the 5-3 suited, and L in the big blind making an even less reasonable cold 4-bet with a 6-4 suited. Both players come along. We head to a board of 8-8-3 with 2 hearts, and certainly any player could have an 8 here since all of the ranges seems to be any 2 cards. So they all cautiously decide to check, even Henry, who did have that pair of 3s and is currently in the lead. We get this turn card of the 7 of clubs, which puts open and straight draws like 10-9 and 5-6 out there. as well as another flush draw. L decides to start bluffing with a 6 high. It might be a little suspicious that he called 4-bet, repping hands like aces and kings, but then even though the flop was pretty good for an overpair, but had some draws like the heart draw, he didn't bet then, he just decided to check. I think this is why Ling Ling gets suspicious, and even though she just has ace high with just overcards, she decides to look him up and call this small bet. Henry, who still has the best hand with his pair of threes, doesn't feel like he can continue against a bet and a call with bottom pair and no kicker, so he folds what's currently the best hand. We get this 4 of hearts on the river, which is a funny card because L, who had been bluffing, now actually has the best hand with a small pair of 4s, getting ahead of the ace high of Ling Ling. The hearts also complete the front door flush draw, so anyone who flopped a flush draw now completes it. It also completes the 5-6 open and a straight draw that showed up in the turn. We now have a 4-8 straight, so a lot of draws did get there. And L, thinking he probably doesn't have the best hand, decides to bet. I assume he's thinking Ling Ling had something like pocket 9s or pocket 10s, maybe even pocket 5s, some sort of pair that she thought was ahead, because an ace-high call on the turn multi-way was a very light call, so he almost certainly didn't think he was good here, so he went big trying to get a hand like pocket 10s to fold. He's bluffing, and Ling Ling is going with a read. She thinks he might be bluffing. He might have nothing. The problem is he does have nothing. It's just less nothing than her nothing, and so she's actually losing to his hand. I do sympathize a bit with Ling Ling. I think she had a reasonable thought process. If he had that heart draw, he probably would have bet flop. If he had aces, he probably would have bet flop. The hands that she's putting him on are hands like 10-9 of clubs that flop nothing but turned a huge combo draw and thus started leading, but now bricked and only have 10 high, which she can beat with ace high. She may have also been tilting as this was a pretty rough session for her overall, but she does elect to make the call with ace high, and personally, I just always find these hands hilarious where someone says, I think you're bluffing, I call, and they're right, the other person is bluffing, but the caller still loses because they can't beat the bluff. Certainly, as the commentary says, before you bluff catch, make sure you can beat the bluffs, but this happens sometimes. I call them value bluffs, and this might not have been the most exciting hand ever, but these type of situations just always get a chuckle out of me. Next up, we're heading down to Texas to Doug Polk's room in Austin, the Lodge. He's got this live stream on with well-known player Wan Lu. Doug did an analysis of this hand on his channel, so you can go check that out if you want a more detailed breakdown. I'm just going to cover it quickly, but it definitely deserves to be on here because it exemplifies the type of goofiness that you really only see in live poker. You don't see this online in 6max where everybody's playing solid and well-disciplined poker. None of this multi-way craziness because Juan raises with bullets. The kings just comes over the top, but the rest of them are playing pretty deep. And we got the ace-queen suited and the queen-jack suited in this really bloated pot. We're going $5,000, but they still got like 12K, 13K, and 21K behind. So certainly everyone except the all-in pocket kings is not committed yet. The ace-queen of spades flops the stone-cold joint, 3 spades, ace-high flush on an unpaired board. He couldn't be happier, and he sets the trap and checks. Juan is also a little cautious on this monotone flop. She also checks. The top pair of queen-jack, which is pretty much drawing close to dead, decides to protect the top pair, not knowing he's walking right into the trap as both players behind him call. The turn pairs the board, meaning the ace-high flush is no longer the nuts, though certainly a very strong hand. We see the same action with a check to the queen-jack, and queen-jack again bets, and the ace-high flush again slow plays and calls, and Juan decides that she is committed to this huge pot. She didn't drive to the lodge to fold pocket aces in a 4-way pot that's $16,000, so she is just going to ship it in. And Corvette Mike decides he didn't drive to the lodge to fold top pair. Who does? And the kid certainly didn't drive all the way to the lodge to fold the ace-high flush until he does. He gets out of the way with the ace-high flush. They run it twice, and pocket aces scoops. Juan wins a massive $34,000 pot. Good for her. Shame on the kid for folding the flush. Although I understand maybe he got a little worried about pocket jacks, but still, that must be brutal for him to watch. Just live poker is a hell of a drug. And for number 2, we're headed back to Monte Carlo, back to Triton, the 40K no limit hold'em mystery bounty event. We saw some slightly goofy play in these private games in Los Angeles and Texas. And back in Monte Carlo, Triton likes to invite the best players in the world. We saw that in hand number 5 with Chris Brewer and Daniel DeVore's battle. And we're going to see it again with one of the best players in the world making an insane play this hand. We got Artur Martirosyan. Apologies for butchering his name. I'm just going to call him Artur. He's top 100 all time on Hendon Mob. He comes into the pot with the ace-10 of hearts. We go to a 4-way to a monotone flop of ace-queen-jack, all spades. And after being checked to, Artur with his top pair puts in a smaller value bet, trying to get some value and charge the draws, such as the gut shot broadways and flush draws, which is exactly what he's up against when the king of spades makes the call. That king of spades draw gets there in the biggest way possible when the 10 of spades rolls off on the turn, completing the royal flush, the best possible hand in poker. However, Artur is a strong player, and probably, even though he just made 2 pair, isn't going to overcommit here because there's 4 to a straight and 4 to a flush. He certainly is hoping that there's a small chance his 2 pair could be good. If not, he doesn't want to pay off a big flush, so he decides to check back. Trouble is brewing for Artur, however, when the 10 of diamonds rolls off on the river, giving Artur a full house with 10 full of aces. A very strong hand that many players would have a hard time getting away from. His opponent sets the trap with his royal flush by checking it over to Artur, who looks to get value with his full house by betting almost the size of the pot. The trap now set, his opponent springs it and check jams all in, putting Artur to the test for his tournament life. But again, this is not Max Payne Monday on Hustler Casino Live. It's Triton Poker featuring some of the best pros in the world. And Artur does the detective work and realizes that a check raise all in here is almost certainly not a bluff on this incredibly dangerous board. It's very likely the hand he's representing, the king of spades for a royal flush or perhaps a bigger boat. Either way, it takes an incredible amount of discipline to fold a full house, having already put the majority of your chips into the pot in a short stack tournament game, but Artur finds the discipline and finds an amazing fold. And finally, on to our number 1 hand of the month. We're at Poker Go Studios in the capital of poker itself, Las Vegas, Nevada, with Super Pro Andrew Roble raising in a double-straddled, high-stakes hand to $16,000. He gets action from Sammy Elamawi, who I'm just going to call Sammy, and Humboldt Mike. Sammy has the weakest of the hand with the 10-7 suited in spades, and Humboldt Mike has the ace-10 of diamonds. That ace-10 of diamonds flops the nut flush draw, a very strong hand on this queen 4-5 2-diamond board. Both players check to him, and he bets pretty big, a $29,000 bet. Roble has ace high, absolutely nothing, gets out of the way. Sammy also has absolutely nothing. He's got backdoor spades, backdoor straight draw. We'd expect a fold, but instead he decides to get creative and makes a big check raise here to $109,000. Humboldt Mike is definitely going to continue with such a strong hand. The only question is he going to 3-bet his nut flush draw or just call? And I think call is the more standard option here. The jack of clubs rolls off of the turn. Humboldt Mike now has a combo draw, as any king would also give him the nut Broadway straight draw. Sammy, meanwhile, completely missed his spade draw, completely missed his backdoor straight draw. He has 10 high and nothing, no cards, no draw. He's got nothing, and he's only got 1.5 pot behind him, so he doesn't even really have that much room to maneuver a bluff, but he doesn't care. He's going to go for it anyway and make a big bet here. He goes about 3/4 pot, $182,000. Again, I just don't see how Humboldt Mike could ever consider folding with a nut flush draw, a gut shot to the nuts, and it's even possible an ace could be good if Sammy's just protecting a hand like king queen. So once again, very reasonable to call, very reasonable to ship it in. Call is probably a little better since everything better is gonna call if you ship, but might as well keep Sammy's bluffs, like exactly what Sammy has in it since you're ahead of his bluffs. So again, he makes a very reasonable call. We now have a massive 631K pot. There's only 186 behind. The river is a complete brick, and Sammy does not care. He's still gonna go for it. He only has 1/3 pot. He's giving Humboldt Mike an amazing price to just call him off here. The problem is Humboldt Mike missed his flush draw, missed his straight draw, didn't even make a pair with an ace or 10. So he feels like he has nothing even though he's getting amazing odds on this call. And it's still $187,000 and he's facing a check raise on the flop, a barrel on the turn, and what seems like a river bet that could never be a bluff. But Sammy has cojones of steel and just didn't care, just told the story on the flop, told the story on the turn, and puts the money in on the river and gets a fold in an $817,000 pot, a completely nasty bluff that he shows to the table and partially humiliates Humboldt Mike, although I probably would have folded the same way in that spot, so I can't really blame him. But just a great bluff by Sammy, a great hand, and you love to see someone find the balls to go for the big triple barrel and have it get through. Hey, if you watched the video this far, thanks for watching. This is a new format that I'm experimenting with. I'm sure I missed some great hands. I'm still developing the systems to aggregate them all. And one that I'm hoping for is that people join my Discord and send me interesting hands there. And I'll take a look. Hopefully next time I do this video, I'll cover more hands and make sure I don't miss any good ones. Thanks for watching and see you next time.